player or whatever he is, come through your organization and spend so many great years and establish a reputation, you got to like look back and be like, that was special, even though it wasn't, it didn't end up how we all wanted it to. I read an interesting article by Barry Trammell last night, and his articles sometimes piss me off, but this one was just kind of talking about the taking Presti's comments and saying like the modern NBA would have really fit really well for the past team. Talking about Jeff Green, his continued success in the NBA until 34, I think, or something like that. Like Harden, Russ, KD, like all these guys were in the playoffs or are in the playoffs. Like all these guys are really good players on good teams. And it just was like they were almost too early for their time. And
you're absolutely right.
I feel like there's, like you said, a lot of lessons to be learned from those experiences, especially specifically from Presti in team building concepts. How can he improve? How can he take it up a notch? So I feel like incredibly excited knowing that, like, I feel like what you're saying, like those years weren't like a complete loss just because we didn't win it all.
Yeah.
And that's something that's hard to remember in sports. Like there's only one championship, but like those are like incredibly special years, I'd say.
The joy. Yeah. I mean, think about it. I mean, like when you get a chance to watch your team have success in the playoffs, man. I mean, like every morning you're waking up, you're happy. Every night you're going to bed and you're like, you know what? I'll fucking have an extra beer because fucking my team's doing well. Like it's the fucking bee's knees, man.
Yeah.
Like, and like sounds weird and crazy, but it's the same endorphins as when you have a child, like you're just pumping with endorphins of like just happiness and joy. And then all of a sudden, like the reality hits you and your child's screaming and all this other stuff, like a couple weeks down the road, just like when a couple weeks down the road, your team's out of it. But it's always so much fun to be able to watch it. And especially with the Thunder and what they did against Golden State and what they did against, at the time, Miami, it was just like, you felt like this was the beginning of something great. And that's why when we're looking at this team that we have, it's money, because we see the same things. And it's something that when you see it, you know it. And that's what's so great about it.
Yeah, one of the things that Trammell mentioned was that Presti said something about if you're waiting for the Red Sea to part or the seas to part before it's your turn, it'll never happen. And one of the things that was special about that Thunder team, even though they didn't win, was we were in the midst of historically great teams all around us. And we felt like it was still our time. We didn't feel like we had to wait our turn. We went after the Spurs, in the middle of the end of their time, but
Golden State's beginning.
The
Lakers
beginning
end.
In the beginning of LeBron and winning championships. His first championship in Miami was against us, and like you said, the end of Kobe's legacy. Our first year in the playoffs was when the Lakers beat us, and then they went on to win the championship. I think the next year we went and we got beat by the Mavericks, who went on to win a championship. We beat the Spurs the year after they won a championship. And then the year that they beat us, they went on to win a championship.
Yeah.
Like, these things matter.
Yeah.
And, yeah, like, historically, when people look back and they're like, oh, that was one of the greatest teams ever, one of the greatest teams ever, they don't really give the Thunder enough credit, because the reality is these teams that people look at and say that was, like, one of maybe top 5 teams in the history of the NBA, those are the teams that were beating us. Like, there were 50 years out of the last 75 years where those teams would have won championships. But we ran into historically great teams, and we almost still kicked down the door against the Warriors in that 73-win game. Team, when we got up 3-1. Like,
crazy.
Right. We saw great stuff, and we all feel it. We all feel like it's coming back.
And that's why, for me, it's important to cheer for the ones that are still left in the playoffs every year, because in a way, like the happiness and joy. And the most I remember about KD and playing inside the Oklahoma City Chesapeake Arena at the time was when he would, the crowd would be going crazy, bro. And you'd feed off the crowd and he would hit back-to-back threes or a massive dunk or a block or whatever, and I see that, and I cannot wait for these young players to have that experience. Cannot wait. Like, you know that that's going to be monumentally changing their lives when they have, a mass amount of fans cheering for them in such a way that the whole place is rocking. And they've never had that experience yet. Playoff basketball is different, and when you have your team that believes in you, especially like the Oklahoma City Thunder fans will this next year, they'll all be there. Almost every game will be maxed out. Every game will be full, and people are going to be taking on, and it's going to be exciting because like I want to say that the Thunder are going to be a top 4 team, but the reality is that we don't know how good this team's going to be with Chet yet. We don't know how good this team's going to be with whatever pieces Sam adds on. Like
Let's just
we just it's crazy,
remove
bro.
Chet, like his actual game, okay, from the conversation, or him as a person. But just imagine you took and you inserted a player that was top 2 for Rookie of the Year to this next group after already having a top 2 Rookie of the Year guy last year. What will that do for our win total if we just improve a little bit? All those guys get a year older, and then you add on top of that a top 2 Rookie of the Year candidate.
Well, I think if you want to look at that, you really have to take a step back and see what J-Dub did. Yes, different positions, yes, different mentalities and all this other stuff. But rookie, second, in MVP or Rookie of the Year voting, you have to take that in consideration. So I'm looking at it and I'm saying J-Dub and Chet. How many wins did J-Dub help us win versus how many wins will Chet help us win? And I look at it and I say that I feel like J-Dub was the reason why we won 7 games. Without him, we probably would have lost. So then I want to put those 7 games on Chet and say, that's your baseline. Because I don't know what the mentality of him playing after this, injury. So I want to say the baseline 7. So just that, we're at 47 games that we were winning without anybody else getting better. I mean, that's without Shea getting better. That's without Dort getting better. That's without J-Dub having a massive increase in the year, which I'm telling you guys, this next year for him is going to be insane. So I think that we can plus 12 next year. Baseline. With
that
Chet.
Would put us into like somebody said if we did something like that, that would be like a historically great team.
Yeah, 52 wins.
Oh, plus it's 12 wins. I thought you were saying plus 12 points. I was like,
No. Just 12 wins. So we had 40 wins this year with the playoffs. So really 51 wins is I think our baseline, taking out the playoff win. So to me, like that's where I'm circling and saying, 51 is your baseline. And if we can get to that 51 mark, then what do we like? If there was this year, it would be 7 games behind number 1 seed, which would put us again top 4, top 5. So it's in that spot right there. Do I think this next year is going to be the same? No, I think we'll have a couple 60 win teams in the West next year. So I do think that there's going to be a bigger gap. So we could end up being in a position that we get 54 or 55 wins next year, and we're only a few games back behind first place. That's the reality of this. And a lot of people won't, disagree or agree with us, but the reality is it doesn't really matter because we don't know how good this team's going to be or how bad this team is going to be until we get to February. That's really the mark. Like if we're 5 or 6 games or 7 games or 10 games above 500 in February, then we know that we're going to be really good shape.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have those crazy fans here in the U.S. At least not except for in Philadelphia. But
we get people that like get seriously injured after games because there are hooligans, right, that still roam the streets after games to pick on the other team's fans, and we've experienced similar to that with baseball when Mark and I and our friends and John we went to Boston Stadium, Fenway, thank you. And we were Yankees fans and we're playing against Boston, and we got beer thrown at us, and we had people yelling and screaming at us, following us to the subway, telling us to get out of it. It was pretty intense. So like we do have crazy fans, but I wouldn't call it any level as the European fans, and especially with football. Like the way that you guys are is insane. Like the hooligans that will go and just beat the shit out of everybody, and it's amazing. Like you have fans that literally they charter buses and they drive like 14 hours in these buses that are all designed to get the fans to the stadium. Like it's intense, man. Like I've never seen a fan base like that, and I hope one day it gets crazy like that for us.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think a lot of people, it feels weird because it shouldn't be like this, but a lot of people like kind of don't know how good of fans the Thunder fans can be because I don't know, man. Early in the life of the Thunder, it felt like we had some of the best fans in the NBA that were going to be there through thick and thin, no matter what. And yeah, a lot of them got really hurt. I knew some people who didn't feel like the ownership was willing to invest, and they were
Yeah,
paying a lot of money for tickets and things like that. But they got some great basketball. But I was just surprised how long it took this season for fans to really start showing up in force.
you're right.
Um, I think it wasn't really until the start of the new year when they came back from that road trip where they won, I think, 5 games in a row. And then it was like, okay, the fans were starting to pick up on it, but it still took time. That's
Yeah,
unusual for us. And there's a level like we didn't get a chance to play the playing game at home. That's something you earn, and we didn't get that chance to see Chesapeake rock out for a do or die situation.
dude,
But
and it gets crazy there, but it's
it's
not on the same level of
no.
having 60, 70,000 fans in the stands. And
But the way you were talking about the players feeding off of it and having a chance, like especially when you talk about a big game player like Giddy, like
yeah,
who loves to
oh,
play his
Giddy's so
biggest
good.
games, like think about that, man. Like he put up like an incredible stat line, and then not just stat line, but he played um,
Thanks, Frank. You too, man.
winning basketball the entire fucking time, game sealing type rebounds and stuff, and he did it away. That's
Yeah,
like for a young player, that's a little less understood how important that is. But like doing it at home, like that's still important. But doing it away means that you didn't get that energy from the crowd, which means that like you're a competitor and that competitive fire burns. And I think like when I heard Presti say like certain players in the past had such a competitive fire that took them further than their God-given natural athletic ability could, and they were able to do stuff that was almost superhuman because of how competitive they were. And we haven't we haven't really seen Giddy start to scratch the surface, but it's coming. It's a different level. It's very little understood, I think. But when he decides that he wants to win, it's kind of like nothing because of his size, nothing can stop
mm-mm.
him from
He's
getting to
going
the
straight
ball.
downhill, man.
He can just go get it. And he's learning how to like lock in, and then when he goes to his full like potential, which we're talking like peak of his prime, maybe 5 or 7 years away, people are gonna have issues because it's like certain players when they decide they want to do something, you cannot stop them.
Can't, man. You just can't. I think that's what's exciting about recognizing each individual person on this team, and why Sam Presti picked them up, and why Coach D is so elite with these guys. It's the downhill mentality, man.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of these guys tack the hole with that tiger mentality, and it makes it very difficult to stop. But there is a difference with Josh Giddey's intensity than anybody else's that I've seen on the team. Like he recognizes the big moments before the big moments even happen, and he's able to rev it up and get there. And because of that, like yes, we have Shea as our leader, but as this team is getting older, you're going to see Josh take this silence in a way leadership from the team. And in that fourth quarter, you're going to see how it's designed to really highlight what Josh can do. And I'm excited about this team. I'm excited about it in so many different ways. And man, I was just reading this article. It's kind of a swap of subjects of sorts. But talking about Josh got me thinking about the article of the Australian guy in Indonesia.
Yeah,
Did you hear about that, dude?
you were telling me a bit about it. Tell me more.